Welcome to another edition of the Buffalo Bills Roundtable. Gentlemen, I want this fucking game so much. I want
You
this
said it.
fucking game more than I think I've ever wanted a game in my entire life. All right, but onward, let's just go around the table. Let's see how everyone's doing, where everybody's headspace is at, because I, quite frankly, don't know what to think. Z-Bot, what's good with you, man?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I was asked earlier how nervous I am. It's weird. I haven't determined how nervous I am or the reasons why I'm nervous. I think the reason why I'm nervous is because this is probably the most confident I've been in their ability to win this type of game. So therefore, that makes me more nervous. The more confident I am, the more nervous I usually am because why am I so confident? I shouldn't be confident. So that's kind of where my mindset's at. I'm also starting to realize, I think, as the week goes on, that my nerves are more stemming from the fact that I think that if they are unable to go and do this Sunday, when are they going to be able to do it? This is the first opportunity they've had to get the Chiefs at home. During the Mahomes run, this is bar none the most vulnerable they've looked. And the Bills are also riding an unprecedented heater into this game. With all those factors in mind, if they're unable to win this one and move on, it makes you wonder when they're inevitably going to be able to do it, if they're going to be able to do it. So it just feels like it's their best opportunity in a long time. I said the other day when I was on my show talking about why I'm as confident as I am in their ability to do it, not just because you look around the league and it's, the Houstons of the world beating the ever-living shit out of Cleveland, Green Bay Packers torching Dallas. You're seeing every, given time slot, any team can win. The Bills have proven that all year long, but they did it in a way that they haven't done before, and that was being backed into a corner with no ability to go anywhere but either forward or home. And they plowed forward each and every week, and they've done it coming into this week. Last year, they kind of stumbled into the playoffs, even though they were 13-3. This year, they stumbled in, but it wasn't a stumble. It was almost like a Hulk run through a wall. It just felt like a stumble because they were either going to be the 7 seed or the 2 seed, if a seed at all, had, we weren't going into that game against Miami without Jacksonville losing. So it feels like it was a lot more difficult. It feels like maybe the team's weaker. It's the opposite to me. Last year, they fell into it despite being 13-3, probably should have lost to Skylar Thompson and certainly had, did everything in their power to do so. And then they got the doors blown off them against the Bengals. I feel way different about this team. And it's because of their ability to overcome adversity every single week. So for all those reasons, I know it's kind of like a oxymoron. For all those reasons, I'm confident. But for all those reasons, I'm also incredibly nervous. So to answer your question, Dan, going into Sunday, it's a mixed bag, just like it is with every other game. But like you said at the top of the show, I don't think I've ever wanted a game as bad as I want this one.
It's the PTSD for me. Kevin, thoughts, my friend? You know what, man? Like, you're the guy that likes to rely on the data that helps you sleep at night. And you know what? I've been doing some research myself, my friend. All right. And I'm going to show you guys a couple of things that have helped me. I mean, obviously, I'm still fucking nervous. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. It's win or go home. And I look at this Bills team. I look at our roster. And I look at the fact that the Bills have been playing a hell of a lot better football the past 9 weeks than the Kansas City Chiefs have been, right? So I know that it's not necessarily like, oh my God, I'm afraid that we're going to lose to the Chiefs because we are not the better team. It's more so we better fucking win this game because we have no excuse not to, based off of what I have been looking at. Kevin, talk to me.
You had an epically poor stretch from Kansas City just recently. It wasn't a September stretch. It was a December stretch where they lost 5 football games. It wasn't just a stretch where they kind of reminded me of the way the Bills looked last year, kind of disoriented, discombobulated. The Bills didn't drop that many games that they did, but they're talking like no one's talking about their epic Christmas loss to the Raiders. You're talking about them struggling through a Jake Browning game against the Bengals where it was pretty close throughout most of the game. The score ended up reflecting for Kansas City. And then the last game of the year where they went back and kicked a field goal with their backups in to win. So really nothing you can take out of that situation. So ultimately, look, Houston's hotter. Houston might be better than Kansas City. I was thinking about the paths of the way to score a game, and maybe Houston would have been a tougher game with the way Stroud and that team is playing. However, it's Patrick Mahomes. He's the best player in the league, in my opinion. I don't care who's running routes for them. At some point, he has enough to get it done. So that's always what's kind of in the back of your head and trepidation there of being able to pick the Bills comfortably. But look, you both said it. They're coming into this game hot. Last year, they were not. We're not overcoming adversity. They had the DeMar situation. They barely beat the Patriots, if we remember right, going into the game, the playoff game. They barely overcame Skylar Thompson. The defense was a wreck. The offensive line looked like a mess. And they came in this kind of similar conditions, a little snowier last divisional round than it will be this Sunday. But a situation where the O-line didn't look prepared to play. Josh Allen had an offensive coordinator calling games in a perfect condition, like in a dome. And it just did not mesh. There was receivers open. Josh couldn't get into them. And the season ended last year kind of strange. But this year is totally different. They overcame that adversity. They keep winning. They're closing out games defensively at the end of situations. They have third stringers in a corner and linebacker and are still winning football games. Pittsburgh had every right to kind of tie that game up and be in it with literally A.J. Klein off his RV. You had Cam Lewis filling in for the most important Taron Johnson. You had Kyrie Elam coming back with his redemption story. I mean, you had Dorian Williams, who got behind A.J. Klein and Balin Spector now in the game. I mean, Pittsburgh had every right to go ahead and really put some pressure on, and the Bills defense closed and shut down the door. Dane Jackson, amazing performance from him, a guy I've much criticized. But ultimately, this McDermott defense is getting it done right now, and something we can't say that they were able to do in stretches, with Leslie Frazier, and especially with this offensive line. That's the only team in the league that's played together the whole season. So right now, that offensive line is encouraging how it's different than last year in the divisional round.
See, the thing is, and guys, I'm not sure if you feel the same sentiment right now, but at the beginning of, right when we were 6-6, I put something out on the internet on Twitter, and I said, you know what, this feels eerily similar to the 2021 season. So this is going to build even more anxiety, right? I mean, we were 7-6 at one point, went on a run, won the AFC East, beat the shit out of the first team we played in the wild card, and then we played Kansas City when 13 seconds happened. I'm seeing each and every single domino fall of that exact same damn season. But the difference here, and talk to me about this. This is something that has helped me, I would say, sleep a tad better that night, right? This is something where I was just like, holy shit, we sincerely do not have an excuse. Right here, gentlemen, I have in front of you the stat splits for scoring and yardage from Kansas City when they are away and Buffalo when they are at home. And we have an advantage literally in every single damn category. So injured defense or not, I'm looking at this and I feel like the writing is on the walls. There's no excuse that we shouldn't be able to go out there and play the football that we are supposed to be playing at this point.
Wow, that's interesting. Look at that. Every single angle.
Every single one.
The one that I think is probably the most shocking would be the just sub 30 at home. That's got to be inflated from the early season games, I would imagine. Mm-hmm. But it kind of reflects what the Bills have been the last couple of weeks. I think they have 4 straight games now, 27 plus points. And Kansas City, the interesting part about those stats is if you look at what the Bills are averaging at home, right around 30, the Bills are 4 straight games now, 27 plus. I don't believe Kansas City has allowed a single team all year to score 30 plus. So the way that this game sets up, I look at it for, if you were to take it for what it is at face value, the way I think everybody else wants to see it, you're going to think Mahomes, Allen, shootout, that type of game. I don't think it's going to be that type of game at all. I think this game is going to be eerily similar to what we saw earlier in the year, 20-17 type game, where the Buffalo Bills are probably the team at home, the way that they've been playing, capable of scoring more than the Chiefs in regard to getting towards that 30 mark, maybe being that team to be the first against these Chiefs to get there. But the way that these two teams have been playing as of late, it just seems as though that's where this game is heading. And I also look at these stats, and then I also look at what I think about this type of game in itself. And I also wonder if you just throw the stats out for these type of games, because when it comes down to Reed versus McDermott and Allen versus Mahomes, I wonder if we see a completely different type of coaching implemented from Andy Reid from the last game into this game. We saw the late game wrinkle that could have blown it for the Bills that wound up, of course, being called back, offsides heard around the world. But you know Andy Reid's got those things in his bag. And last week, it felt like he didn't have to do much of anything in order to dig deep to get that win. The Chiefs had that game won before they even walked out of the locker room. And you could tell when they were getting down to in the end zone or the red zone, the Chiefs could have scored 50 points last week if they wanted to. They just got down to the near the end zone numerous times and settled for, I think, 4 field goals. And I couldn't help but wonder if that had a lot to do with the elements, which I think it probably did, or did it have to do with, we know we got this locked up, let's save, our bag of tricks down near the end zone here for the Bills. I know we're coming into this game as an offense people aren't respecting the way that they used to. That's part of this that I wonder, does it get factored in? Do we see a part of a Chiefs offense coming into this game we haven't seen yet, just because Andy Reid's going to be willing to throw the entire bag at the Bills? And then it comes down to Sean McDermott. What's he going to have in his arsenal to be able to counter it with a banged up defense? I have no trepidations, I'd say, in his ability to be able to do it, because Sean McDermott all year long, despite who's been out there, you really haven't been able to tell a lot of the time. It's incredible, the shifting pieces and what he's been able to do with it. I think a lot of the game lies down in those 2 elements. Obviously, of course, Allen versus Mahomes, but even the last game, and the reason I think it's going to be similar to this game, neither quarterback played well. I think Mahomes had a 74 rating and Allen had a 68 rating. Neither quarterback played incredibly well. It just feels like a low-scoring game that comes down to coaching. And all the credit to Sean McDermott. Even though that last game, they do score on that play that gets called back, I emphasize this every time this gets brought up. The Chiefs still had the ball at the 40-yard line with a full set of downs and needed a field goal. And it was the first game post Tyler Dunn article where Sean McDermott said, the hell with the conservativeness at the end of the game here. We're going to go win it. And they were on Mahomes' ass late in that game. And the defense is the one that wound up winning it. So I look at those stats and they're really interesting, Dan. It does make you feel a bit better. I just wonder when you go into this game, if you have to throw everything out, knowing, what this game is and how these two teams play each other nearly every time.
See, funny thing is that yesterday I was on a show with TD Finstock, and surprisingly enough, he said that the Bills, quote unquote, were going to smack the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not sure if he's just trying to jinx us or something along those lines. I really don't know what his angle is from this perspective, but he did say something interesting. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, I haven't looked at the all 22 of their playoff game against the Dolphins. So I'm really just taking what TD said for face value. And Kev, let me know if you did, sort of roll across that all 22 and you can confirm this. But he said something interesting. And he said, although the Kansas City Chiefs walked all over the Dolphins, the same things that have been plaguing them all year as far as drops and their inefficiency in offense was still right in front of your face the entire game. But rather, it was just the Dolphins offense not being able to execute on their plays, obviously. Did y'all notice that while watching, that the drops were still there? Maybe the miscues and the miscommunications. Kev, let me know your thoughts on that if you did have an opportunity.
Yeah, I did. You saw 2 drops by Travis Kelce. Just doesn't look like the same player. Rashee Rice is a very nice looking young talent, probably easily their best, most reliable player, is a rookie. Lot to rely on there. And I actually had a Kansas City guest, Ron, runs Arrowhead Pride on my show, mentioning that, yes, the crowd noise may not get to Mahomes. It's Patrick Mahomes, but absolutely going to get to the receivers. They're going to need to know checks. They're going to need to know audibles. And those kind of things could certainly cause some trepidation and some interesting problems with the receiving core. And yeah, they showed up to be, to me, not overly great. Rice is a good talent, but there is some things still popping on film. They're not getting it done in the red zone. And you guys were going over the box score a little bit easier. And if you just look at, throw advanced analytics away, they've scored 13, 25, 14, 27, 17, 19, 31 against the Raiders, 17 against the Eagles, 9 against the Broncos. So are we sure they can score over 25 points? Because I'm not, especially on the road, 10 points per game less. Their analytics are worse on the road. Mahomes is good on the road. The team isn't. That's the biggest thing. Everyone's like, well, Mahomes. Yeah, I mean, Mahomes is Mahomes, and he's got no issues on the road. I have no problems with Patrick Mahomes. But is his team good on the road? Is his defense just as good on the road? The only teams that they've beaten also in the playoffs, the Dolphins twice. So are they going to be able to secure themselves against better looking football teams? That's an issue the Bills have faced. That's an issue the Dolphins and Cowboys were looking at points this season. The answer is, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure that they have what it takes to be able to beat a team that can score with them consistently. And I don't know that the weapons are there, in my opinion. They have to overhaul that unit. It's not very good. And you're looking at now a rotation with Justin Watson, and I think they just fully benched a couple of their guys. Sky Moore is coming back from injury, but they don't like him. Tony's been benched. Ross is very unathletic, had a terrible scores, but they kind of liked him in preseason. MVS is just not very good. They're phasing in Mecole Hardman more, but I mean, he should have done better on the deep throws and didn't. Ultimately, guys, the weapons aren't there. Their whole entire team is what Patrick Mahomes can do with that limited weapons to Rice and Kelsey and then Isaiah Pacheco, because they don't have anything else there. They will probably be without their starting nose tackle, who isn't great, but it is somebody that does get a lot of snaps, and Derek Nottie.
Okay. Yeah, it's a great point. And I got to tell you, the reason I brought up a couple of minutes ago, the idea of Andy Reid throwing something at us, it's not necessarily because I think they're going to do it. It's because it's part, I reference it back to how it felt immediate post Brady in New England, where you knew the Patriots weren't good, but you could not accept the fact that they weren't good. You kept waiting for Belichick to just do something that was going to revert them back to the greatness that they had and ultimately the stranglehold they had on the Bills. And it never happened. And those demons were exercised in the wild card round a couple of years ago. And then from there on out, there was no fear of New England. This isn't to that capacity, but this year, everyone keeps saying, the Mahomes is going to turn it on. The Chiefs are going to turn it on. They haven't at all. It has been a league or a year-long period of being in a stagnant spot on offense. So I feel like I'm at the point right now where I feel like, it's against the Bills in the playoffs. Reid has to have that in the bag. He has to have that thing coming at us. But to your point, Kevin, not only did you list off all the scores there where they're barely able to crack 20, but on top of that, the biggest point of it all, the reason this game is in Buffalo, and there's a variety of reasons, especially in the Bills' favor. It's insane how this is happening. But the one that's lost out of all of it is the Chiefs' loss on Christmas Day to the Raiders. No one's talking about that. Obviously, for the Bills, you factor in making up the 3-game deficit on the Dolphins. That in itself, absolutely absurd. They had a 0.1% chance to get a 2 seed. That in its own right is the craziest part of it all. But if the Chiefs beat the Raiders, who they have owned since Mahomes comes in the league, this game more than likely is going to be in Kansas City. That game in particular, not only is this the reason it's in Buffalo, but I'm pretty sure in the second half, the Raiders either completed 1 or 2 passes or no passes at all. They didn't do anything in the second half. And yeah, look at that. Look at that.
62 yards.
And they won 21-14. 20-14. The Raiders dominated defensively that game. Max Crosby lived in the backfield. And if we remember a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of months ago, I guess now, when the Bills played the Chiefs, they only sacked Mahomes once, but they hit him 8 times, and they were on him. And the Bills' defense has been extraordinary at getting to the quarterback all year long. So there's part of me that's like, the Chiefs have to be able to find something for this game, right? It's the Chiefs. But if we base it on a literal 17-game sample size, the Chiefs have showed you who they've been every week. And everybody wants to immediately go to last week and say, well, look what they did against the Dolphins. Anybody out there who thought the Dolphins had a prayer in that game going into it, I don't know what you're watching. I don't understand how you could have possibly have thought that Tua was going into that game and making it competitive. And not only did he not make it competitive, if Tyreek Hill doesn't catch a 40-yard duck that was 10 yards underthrown, Tua finishes that game with 140 yards or so. So the Miami Dolphins, as much as the Chiefs beat them defensively, and you have to give them credit there, the Chiefs defense is one of the best remaining, if not maybe the best. The Dolphins never stood a chance in that game. I don't take a whole lot from that Chiefs Dolphins game and say, wow, Chiefs are back. That was more so seeing the flaws of the Dolphins. So if I'm looking at this game, I have to go based off of the wider sample side, and that is a season-long Chiefs team that more or less has underperformed each and every week. And the only thing that scares me, like I said, is just waiting for that moment to come where they flip the switch. But I also have to tell myself, would they have flipped it by now if they had it? And we really haven't seen many signs of their ability to do that. Even coming into this week, I don't think last week immediately writes that off because they won 26-7.
So I look at this game, right? And I mean, there's no question that this Kansas City Chiefs secondary specifically is absolutely disgusting. I mean, honestly, like they're very good, very sticky in coverage. But the one thing is that this team can be ran on. All right. 4.4 yards per carry, 23rd in the league. That is amongst the worst. So I don't know about you guys, but for some reason, I have this gut feeling that I wouldn't be surprised if we have a very, very similar game plan to what we had against the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, and Cook went off in this game against the Chiefs the first time we played, too. I think he had 140 all-purpose yards. Like in that game, they shut down Stephon Diggs. Allen had a 68 rating, I think, or something like that. It wasn't anything great. James Cook was the stud in that game. And that's what makes me also think it's lower scoring, because not only do I think Cook is going to be a big factor in this, Isaiah Pacheco didn't play for the Chiefs the first time that the Bills won against them. He'll be in for this game, and he had a great game last week. So it's coined, and of course it should be Mahomes Allen part 3, right? I feel like a lot of this game's going to come down to that, and it's the most interesting element of it because both teams have great defenses, and they can definitely run the ball when they want to. But to me, the Bills are, I think, when it comes to their ability to run the ball, have the upper hand just because their run D in itself the Chiefs run D has not been up to the task at all. And last week, Mike McDaniel bailed on the run just like he did against the Bills. I don't think, like you just said, Dan, to the point about the Cowboys game, I don't think Joe Brady will bail on it. They're running the ball at like a 50% clip right now. I feel like they're definitely going to stay on the ground if it's working early on. And if not, I still think they try to go at it as much as they can.
So what are your thoughts, Kevin?
Interesting enough, time for some advanced analytics now to have something with that. The Bills, for the first time, they ran the ball at will. They turned 85.7% of their sets of downs into first downs, which is a touchdown or a first down. So, and 48% of the rush plays resulted in very positive EPA results. So you have right there where they were able to extremely run on the Chiefs. The Chiefs' run defense, although their pass defense is very similar to the Steelers' overall defense and most advanced metrics are better than the Chiefs. Their pass defense is very similar. Their run defense isn't, though. 27th in the league in DVOA. It's pretty bad. Like, it's not only not good, it's toward the bottom of the league with like the Giants and the Bengals' awful defense, the Carolina. You're talking about some really bad run defenses. So you would think that the Bills would absolutely monitor that. And one thing is they can't cover the running back out of the backfield. Bigger day for James Cook was his 80 yards plus receiving and the seam route that he busted through, completely torching their linebackers. So I think that's the problem, whereas Nick Bolton is a good linebacker. He struggles at time in pass coverage, and we saw that with his first game back against the Bills. Will he be more prepared? Will Drew Tranquil come in at times? We'll have to see. But ultimately, that run defense is the issue for them. And although Isaiah Pacheco's pretty good, and I think everyone would say, he's a pretty good back. He's a good complement to Patrick Mahomes for the most part in that offense. They run at 17th, advanced analytics. So there's stretches where they don't get that going either. The Bills are 7th for purposes of this. So they run the ball better. The Bills run the ball better. Tony Romo mentions it every time he covers the Bills, how they're now not just Josh Allen. Yeah. It's a complimentary. They got James Cook now. This is why they're different. You hear all those kind of things, and it's true. The fact that Joe Brady didn't go away from the run. He goes more to the run, almost to a detriment at times, like late in the season against the Chargers. The Bills' passing EPA was extremely positive, and it would have said to throw the ball a little bit more on the Chargers in that game. But he relied completely closing out the game on the run and taking what was given to him at times. And the Bills are able to do, we see these long drives, they're able to sustain even after that Pickens holding that he was complaining about. The Bills just ran it down with Ty Johnson They're able to do that now with their consistency of the 5 offensive linemen. So they're able to get these drives with big stretches. And it's something they definitely weren't able to do last season. You've seen it at times in the McDermott era, but not like you do this year with Brady and how he's successfully running the ball right now. I mean, he's over 50% clips running the ball. So that's what's really interesting about, having Josh Allen on the roster. But at the same time, I mean, look at even last week, 34 carries. At some point, you haven't really seen 18 carries from your running back one very much in this era of football. So I think the Bills will have some things planned for the Chiefs, and they've been very successful running the ball. And they're going to shorten this. If I know one thing, they're going to shorten this game and keep Mahomes off the field because Mahomes is the great equalizer on their end. And I think the Bills will have some plans for time of possession.
Speaking
Kevin, do those numbers mention anything about the run defense for the Chiefs against Josh Allen? Because I went back and looked, because obviously around this time of year, he's amping it up. The last 3 games, he's been running the ball like his hair's on fire. Went for 74, even though it was only on 8 carries last week, and he had 10 plus the 2 games before. But one of the only other games this year where he ran for double-digit rush attempts was against the Chiefs, and it was his second lowest yards per carry on the year. I think he ran for 32 yards on 10 carries. He didn't have much luck, and he also got sacked 3 times in that game. Is that more due to the pressure, or is that something that you think Joe Brady can work around and get Allen the ability to run the ball in cohesiveness with James Cook and really get that run game going against a lackluster?
They play sticky coverage and they focus more on coverage. So it's surprising that they're vulnerable metric based against the quarterback run. So it's surprising that there was not more success the first time, but historically you can get the Chiefs running the ball with your running quarterback. I mean, that's for sure. I mean, historically they're not great against a quarterback run. They generally go into coverage. They don't spy a ton. So we're going to see they need some really containing of the defensive ends. They need to contain Josh Allen. And Josh has just shown a propensity at some of those matchups that he's been so successful in the air that they really haven't had to run a ton in more modern history. But I think the fact is that if you ask them or put on the film, they are vulnerable against quarterback runs. That's why they don't match up extremely well against Baltimore, in my opinion, the way they play defense and their running quarterback. Right. I don't believe that they're going to be able to go to Buffalo and then to Baltimore to win either. So I do think that they're vulnerable to this quarterback run, and the metrics do support that they're in the bottom third of the league against quarterback runs. So I think you'll see, and that hence the game plan last time, 10 carries. I think you'll see 10 carries from Josh Allen this week.
Yeah.
I mean,
look at that, though. He's running it like crazy against the Chiefs every time, though, Dan. That's crazy. Look at that.
It pops on film. Yeah, it's definitely an advantage to show that, because then it gets them out of their pass lanes, too. That's huge. It's just like running the ball, standard running the ball, or drive starters. Right. They don't know 10 to 12 carries a game that they're going to now have to leave coverage. Now, is Josh going to whip it over like they did against Dawson Knox 2 years ago? Like, there's plays that they have built in there to show quarterback run, but to actually really be helpful to the Bills passing game. So they need to make their decision when it comes to Josh Allen. And they've done okay with him in terms of running the ball, but it's definitely suffered against their really high end pass coverage. And that's what the Bills are trying to do, is get them out of that sticky coverage.
Speaking of any favorable matchups, especially when it comes into the pass game, I mean, you assume that L'Jarius Sneed will probably be on Diggs. You assume that McDuffie will probably be on Shakir. Are there any favorable matchups that you guys have been pointing out? I mean, I think that this is probably going to be a big Dawson Knox and a Dalton Kincaid game. And then, so obviously as well with James Cook being involved in the pass game by itself, but are there any other matchups that I'm missing?
They shut down Kincaid the last time. I know he had, I think, 8 targets for only 20 yards in that game. What we talked about this, I think, going into the Steelers game. The Steelers were one of the worst teams in the league against tight ends. You saw it. Yeah. You saw it. I mean, that was 2 touchdowns right there. Kincaid's been on fire. 3 straight games where he's been a major factor. I hope it's funny you bring that up, Dan, because I was hoping, looking at L'Jarius Sneed, who has shut down. I mean, I think he's been dominating. The rate against him has been great, and he took Diggs out of the game the last time around. Kincaid, if he's able to continue his production, I mean, they're clearly trying to get him involved, and it just feels like the more that they try, the more it works. That Chiefs game felt like an outlier. 8 targets and on only 20 for only 20 yards. It doesn't match up really with what we've been getting from him as of late. I mean, he has been a major contributor, and what I've loved about these guys in particular lately, especially last week, the distribution of the ball it was all over the field. The amount of guys that got involved was extraordinary. And for Diggs, as of late, where we're not getting those 100-yard plus games, it was like he was the perfect contributor to a vast landscape of guys who got involved. He still led the team in targets and catches, and his catches were certainly impactful. There was nothing crazy down the field or anything like that, but a bunch of first-yard catches, that 3rd and 9, of course. But it's felt like as of late, the tight ends have been those game breaker type, either the tight ends or Shakir just banging one off out of nowhere. But you saw against the Chiefs, right? They were really trying to get him involved. I can't imagine you hold Kincaid to that low of an output again this time around, knowing you were trying your best to get him involved. It didn't work. You got to think Joe Brady's got something else up his sleeve to try to get him to catch the majority of those 8 targets as opposed to not and only getting 20 yards or so.
So what do you got on that, Kevin?
I think the matchup for the Bills, it's always been, that's why you see the Gabe Davis games, is that their third corner is usually the guy I'm targeting, which obviously now what they have McDuffie in the slot to cover what would be, you would think Shakir, and then obviously Snead and Diggs. So you do have an advantage on the other side of the ball. Could it be a day where you do scheme some things for Trent Sherfield? It's possible. Deontay Hardy, they rotate that second corner, third corner, I guess, whatever you want to call it, really their second boundary. They rotate that position pretty frequently. They try Shamari Connor, a safety that comes down that plays free safety, and they bring in a safety into the box. They do a couple, kind of like we do with Rap at times. So they really mix and match their DB on the other end of the field. And I think the Bills need to target that pretty heavily, because to me, their metrics aren't great over there on the second cornerback spot. And that's where they're vulnerable, because I personally don't think Jalen Watson is very good. I mean, he's shown flashes, but I think he is a liability in coverage. And Joshua Williams as well is a guy they kind of rotate there when they bring in Shamari Connor, rookie safety who is definitely vulnerable in man-to-man coverage if he's ever in those situations. But they put him more in the safety position. The safeties are attainable here, guys. The difference is their safety is weak. Their safety play is very weak this season. That's where you attack them. That's why you attack them down the seam. That's why Knox, look out for Knox in this game specifically, because they may be focusing on Kincaid, and they just don't have enough to cover Knox as well. You can't cover Kincaid, Diggs, Shakir. At some point, the Bills are going to have a plus matchup. And for me, it's the secondary options that the Bills will get involved, because that's where the advantage is Buffalo. Their secondary options are better than the Chiefs' defensive secondary options. So that's where the Bills, you'll see some Hardy, you'll see some Sherfield, you'll see some Knox. That's really where I think the Bills have the biggest advantage. And the way they've been motioning with Andy Isabella, he's been bringing value to this roster in his limited snaps, because he is showing the defense to Josh Allen. So that's basically his role. And that's why Josh Allen knew what he was going to do on that long touchdown run. There's a lot of due to Isabella and showing the coverage to Josh, knowing that I at least had the first down. Because I know what coverage you're going to drop into. So it's the secondary options in this game as compared to maybe a different game where you're going to go full top options. This is a game where you're going to rely on those secondary options. And James Cook out of the backfield, there is nobody to cover him. They couldn't do it in the first game. He is their plus matchup in this game. It's a James Cook, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, Trent Sherfield, Deontay Hardy day.
Beautiful, man. One of these days we'll get Diggs involved, man. I'm excited for that day.
Maybe next week.
Yeah, maybe next week going into it.
Don't out him being able to do some things against Snead when he wants to put that on film. Like, Snead's not going to just lock me down every time we play him either. So don't discount something coming their way when they are assuming that we're going to go to Sherfield, that we're able to sneak something by him, because Snead's trying to cheat up a little bit and help with different rushing lanes from Josh Allen.
That's honestly, though, that right there is what has made all of this so much more impressive to me. The fact that they've done what they've done in the latter half of the year was against, they had 4 games against playoff teams in those final 6. And Diggs, I don't know, obviously nothing incredible on paper compared to what it was in the beginning of the year, and the ability to still score the way that they've been scoring and still win. To me, it all comes down to just being able to go with what's working. That's what I've loved so much about Joe Brady as we go back to that run game you were talking about earlier, where it's like, we don't need to force stuff to Diggs or whoever else just to make it seem like, we're doing what we're supposed to do. They're just doing what they should do. It's been hot. I never thought I would love so much the ability to almost kind of have Stephon Diggs be a sure-handed guy on like a 3rd and 7 type thing. I never knew I would love that as much as I would love, oh, there's Diggs breaking away for that 70-yard touchdown he had against the Dolphins. It's almost felt like he's been the lead in the leader house of a more complementary role that's getting everybody involved. And like you just said, Kevin, like these secondary guys. I mean, Shakir is the prime example of all of it. You would have considered him to be that going into this year. And as the years progressed, it just feels like every week or so, you're getting at least one impactful play from that guy. And if we can continue to build on that, like you said, Sherfield or Hardy, and I mean, even Hardy in himself, I mean, obviously not much on offense, but when these guys are getting opportunities, they just seem to make the most of them when they're given a chance.
And see, I feel like it's even better as well, because this is almost like looking into the future, right? Because obviously Diggs was such a massive contributor to Josh Allen's like development, but now that he's really just practically just, vanished out of thin air for like halfway through the season, this is just giving us nothing but optimism for when he does eventually decide to hang up the cleats or his time in Buffalo is over. So,
and it hasn't really seemed to bother him as much. If you've noticed, he's been a positive vibe on the sideline. And I saw something recently. It's weird how it almost seems to make sense the way it lined up. And obviously winning heals all, and they've done nothing but win since Joe Brady took over. Just wonder how much of his, I don't even know what you'd call it, because it was so overblown by everybody that you can't really say it without making it seem like you're feeding into that. But obviously it seemed like Diggs was maybe a bit frustrated, not nearly to the degree everybody wanted to paint it out to be, but it's just felt like that's kind of turned on a dime a bit, and it really hasn't changed as far as his production is concerned. I wonder how much of that had to do with the change in OC, because he has seemed like he has been a more, I don't know, kind of his light seems to be glowing a bit more despite not putting up the numbers ever since Joe Brady took over.
I mean, it's easy to see what his issue was this offseason, and a lot of it was with Josh and Dorsey. I mean, it's pretty simple. That move was made, and he probably felt listened to. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's rocket science to know what he was thinking in those moments. I think part of his beef was like, look, like this offense isn't moving. Like we're running up under optimal conditions that we don't have in Buffalo, New York. We move games. We have snow. We have this. We have that. This isn't the way you need to call a football game. You need to adjust. You need to stack. You need to build. And I don't feel like that's happening. Yes, we play it, like have good game plans in the perfect conditions. But other than that, like I don't feel like anything's getting done. And you could tell Diggs was really distraught by that. And now he looks like he's playing free. He looks like earlier in the year, we went 6-6 targeting him pretty exclusively.
Yeah.
He had a lot of targets and he was a main focal point. Well, would you rather go 6-1 or 6-6 in those stretches because I heard it all the time. Like, can we get anybody else involved but Diggs? Well, now it's the polar opposite. Exactly. And the Bills are winning that way. So what might be better? Maybe he is taking Snead out of the game. Maybe you got to look at it on the offensive side. He is making more available. He is getting other guys open and things that he's okay with at this stage of his career until they stop playing him like that. And then he's open again. So ultimately he's doing enough for his offense to open up a lot of things. And that's where this would have been a good Gabe Davis game, as much as people love him and hate him. And he's going to get paid. Is he not? Where's he going to go? I have it on good authority. The Bills are still talking to him. So ultimately, what is the situation with Gabe Davis? But this game specifically, we just mentioned their secondary options not being good. I do think that's why Gabe Davis does so well against the Chiefs, because they don't generally focus on him. And he is generally somebody that can beat those backup options or their second options on the defense of the Chiefs. So who's going to step up and take that role? It's going to be a multitude effort here for the Bills. But I think you see the Bills take advantage of a weak safety core and a weak cornerbacks beside their top two guys who are going to, Shakir's going to have to face an all-pro nickel. I mean, it just is what it is this game. So I don't know what you can plan for Shakir in this one, but ultimately it's going to be interesting to see if you see some McDuffie on Kincaid, thus opening up Shakir. So we'll see how they play it.
See,
I was shocked to see Gabe on DMP. What about you, Dan? I really thought we were going to get him back this week.
Me too, man. And you know what? That's a great segue, because with all the injuries in which that we have been experiencing this week, I mean, X has just been filled with people already conceding, being like, oh my God, it's over. It's over, just based off of our injury report.
Yeah, do you guys feel that way? I have not felt that way. It hasn't been factoring into me like the rest of everybody else I'm seeing. I agree with it. It's all I've been seeing.
I don't, because number one, first off, I think that it is fantastic that so Rasul Douglas And then also with Dotson should be back as well. And a lot of people were concerned about Bernard. I mean, it's nice that it seems to only be a sprain. I know that McDermott's, he's throwing it out there right now that there is hope that he might be out there for the most part. But my biggest need that I really wanted back, and in my opinion, I thought this was the most important piece that we need, and I really hope he just flies through the protocol, is Taron Johnson.
No doubt.
I feel like Taron Johnson is a hell of a lot more important than what Bernard would be going into it. But still shocked in the Gabe Davis situation. But it's funny how the targets just always get filtered more into Kincaid and then also Shakir, who have more of an explosive play capability, in my opinion, when Gabe Davis isn't out there in the first place. So maybe it's not so much of a bad thing if Gabe can't play, but I have to look at this injury report right now, and I have to try and guess right about who we're not going to be seeing by itself. I would love Benford to be back. I'm not sure if he'll play. And then
that's the other one too. That's
the other one. I like Dane Jackson.
Corner.
I feel like he'll be okay, but as long as we have Rasul out there, I'm good. And so in that category, but I mean, y'all, like, who do you think for sure 1,010% is not going to be out there on
the
Sunday?
Bottom two are out. The bottom two I know are out. From what I've talked to inside the team, the bottom two you can expect to be out, and Rap Inspector. Okay. I don't know what they're doing with Martin. I don't. He
Fucking
looked limited. Like I don't
Matt.
understand how he's limited. Apparently, so he's trying to give it a go. I thought for sure he would just go on IR. Taron Johnson, by all the videos, and I think within most people who cover the Bills, it seemed like he's good to go. He would not be through that stage of the concussion protocol if he wasn't looking likely. He's doing things that does show he's ready to play in this game. So I think you should be fine there. Douglas has already said himself he's playing Dodson, and McDermott basically said was almost ready. So I think you got those two ready to go. I don't think you'll see Gabe Davis. I do believe he needs one more week, and he will suit up if the Bills advance based on what I've been told. Obviously, Josh is fine, and then Terrell Bernard is really going to give it a try in this specific game. Christian Benford's a big unknown. No one really knows anything. But I think with Douglas, Dane Jackson, Taron playing with Elam behind him, I do think he can rest in this game and see what ends up happening. It's a meniscus, a minor meniscus tear. So we'll see how long. Jordan Poyer played through the same injury last season. So we'll see how long Benford will be out. But he is a top 10 corner. Most people don't realize
that's crazy.
In coverage stats, in separation ability, in ball skills, him and Rasul Douglas and Taron Johnson, all three finished in the top 15 in all metrics. So the Bills had 3 top 15 corners, and I'm sick of hearing about the Chiefs corners. The Bills corners are better. They go 3 deep. The Chiefs go 2 deep.
Well, it's like everything else. The Cowboys had 9 All-Pros, and they got their ass handed to them by a first-year starter. 27-0. The Bills had 1. So that just goes to show you. It's a perfect way to put it, Kevin. These guys, and that's why in McDermott, it's so easy to just jump on the guy every time something goes wrong. And I get it. And I've done my fair share of that at times, deservingly so, in moments where it just feels like, damn, if you just would have approached the moment a bit differently, it felt like the outcome could have been, going in a different direction. But when we look at the totality of this defense, no one just sits back when they're criticizing McDermott and understands. Everybody just always factors in the Bills. Oh, well, it's the Bills, cold weather. They always got a good D. Well, how do they have a good D? Because if you look at what they've lost and continue to lose, and when they lose, they bring someone back. When they bring someone back, it's like this week when you're just going to shift out possibly. You get Rasul back, Benford's gone. They've been doing this all year long where one guy comes in, one guy comes out. And it just felt like almost the one game where it felt like they just didn't have it together to me was Bills Patriots in New England, where Mac Jones just walked down the field in that 2-minute drill. It was the one defensive performance that stood out to me where I was like, man, they just did not seem to be playing the way they've been playing all year. Almost every other game, I'd say, throughout the majority of the game, if not the entirety of it, this defense has impressed the living hell out of me. And it doubles the impressiveness to me, the way that they've done it with who they've done it with. So as we talk about these injuries, obviously it is concerning, but this has been a concern every single week.
All year.
And it's just something they figured out. I can't go into this thinking McDermott can't do it. He's been doing it for 3 straight months. So it's obviously the longest list they've had in a while here, but I don't know, man. I don't know. The faith I've had in that guy and his ability to get this defense ready to rock no matter who's out there, it's off the charts right now.
And so even AJ Klein was making plays last week.
I know.
Was.
And then you got
Second that
Kyrie
dude
Elam,
came
right?
in, man. Dude,
What happens if the Steelers score a touchdown there? They're on the 4-yard line. If the Steelers score a touchdown there, it's an entirely different game. And Kyrie Elam, I mean, granted, has not done anything. So it's obviously criticism has been deserved, especially where he was drafted. But my God, I mean, even when I'm seeing that, you know what I mean? In a playoff game, it's really tough to not have confidence in these guys.
You saw his scouting report all in one drive there for Kyrie Elam.
He got burned.
The holding penalty, the grabbiness of him, the getting trucked, not being a willing run tackler. And then you saw the playmaking ability in the end zone. So you saw it all in one drive, and he clamped down. He played super well the rest of the game. Look, Sean McDermott is coaching good football games. Those are two good challenges. He's coaching good football games right now. And, I don't think early on people wanted to hear it, but he's playing well. There were some inconsistencies on offense. There was some EPA data that showed the Bills' offense was not scoring nearly as good as they were playing. And then you started to see Joe Brady clean up some of those issues and see some of those points go on the board. So right now, he's coaching some good football. These guys are up for him. That article boosted him. It's kind of the reverse last year where they kind of just started to play bad. And it just got downhill. They were sneaking by They were sneaking by the Patriots and limping in. Who knows what would have happened? In that Monday night game, there was some issues in the season that were starting to show themselves on the offensive line. This year, they're all playing for Sean McDermott and that article and everything else. And their defense has played super well, closing out 3 games here. They're doing against Mahomes being one of them. You mentioned a good point. Yes, that offside sucked on the Chiefs, but dude, they went 40 yards in 13 seconds in the playoffs. They couldn't have gone 15 more yards with 3 downs. I'm sorry. I don't want to hear about anything to do with that offsides. The Bills put the pressure, have the interior pressure now to get Mahomes. That's what it's all about. That interior pressure really bothers Mahomes because he can see those edge rushers. He can make them miss and go off script. But that interior pressure from what Ed Oliver's 10 pressures and what he's able to do in this game is immense. They have a great interior O-line. Their 2 tackles are poor, in my opinion. So the Bills will have a plus matchup on their defensive line too, because that O-line's good on the inside, but it's not very good at the tackle positions this year. And that's what's been frustrating Mahomes between the 2 tackles and the receiving core and the crowd noise now that he has to deal with. That's a lot to overcome from an offense who already doesn't score over 21 points very often. So look, there's a lot of good things, but that Sean McDermott defense has been playing super well. Took AJ Klein off of the RV going down to Disney World and called a 12 tackle day with 7 solo tackles and played extremely well against a Steelers rushing offense that was supposed to body us because we were soft.
Oh my God. And you know what, man? I'm highly anticipating a massive game from our defensive ends. But now I got to show you this guy.
I got to show this guy.
You know what sucks about him? I loved his dad. Growing up, it was just oh, there's Ed, the jacked 60-year-old guy. How do you not love this guy? I cannot stand Sean Hockley, not even because of this game. And by the way, this has me. It adds to the nerves. When
yes,
it
does. I
can't lie. It does. He reffed that Eagles game so poorly, so badly. It's the last memory I have of the damn guy. And then you look at all the other stuff. I don't know.
So the Eagles game for the Bills, he was also, I'm pretty sure, officiating. It was the Cowboys-Lions game that happened a couple.
No, that was Brad Allen.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
I don't think we've seen him in the playoffs because of it. They got doxxed because of that.
They got doxxed. He's out. He's not officiating. But in case anybody doesn't know who this guy is, the Buffalo Bills, I believe, are 1-3 against him. I think he's called 379 yards worth of penalties on the Buffalo Bills going into it. Most recent was against so the Philadelphia Eagles. And then I think that we didn't have a game reffed by him in 2021. And then the other 2 were in 2018, 2019. And then he was also in that divisional round as well for the Jags and the Chiefs last year by itself. But the Chiefs are 8-2 in this guy.
Now, listen, Dan, I want to take a moment because it's a rare moment. I want to take a moment to give credit where it's due to Nick Wright, because for a guy that I think is one of the more intelligent guys out there and unfortunately puts that on the back burner to try and be a troll the majority of the time. And when the guy's actually being serious, especially when it comes to basketball, very knowledgeable guy. But, unfortunately, that gets masked up at times. But he's the master at it, and it's worked very well for him. But, when you do get a good tidbit from him, I want to give credit where it's due. And he did make a good point about this.
What do you say?
What he was saying and what he's been doing all week, if you look at him on Twitter, he's just been giving you every single reason why the Chiefs are going to win this game. And, just compiling all of the stats based on the Bills and the Chiefs and why the Chiefs are much better. So everybody didn't already know that historically. He's trying to rank the seasons comparatively. And it's like, yeah, we get it. The 2 seasons that resulted in a Super Bowl victory, yeah, that you would rank those higher than what the Bills have done. But what he mentioned in regard to this particular topic, I actually found to be pretty intriguing. So here's Nick Wright, and he says, Mahomes is 8-2 in these games, ref by Hockey League, but Mahomes is 86-25 in his career overall. So if you were to average it out based on all of the refs that he's played with, it would essentially calculate out to about 8-2 with every ref he's played against. Now, he's played under. Now, obviously, those numbers are going to be different because you lose some games with different refs and win more with others. But in the way he was approaching it, obviously, he's trying to say Mahomes is the greatest. It doesn't matter who's the ref is. This is why his record's 8-2. But I looked at that and I thought maybe it's just because Mahomes' record is what it is, not necessarily because that Hockey League has helped inflate those numbers. So when it came to this, Dan, I was looking for something to make me feel a bit better about it because the last thing I want to worry about is getting hosed. And that did make a lot of sense to me, even though he was trying to pump up Mahomes for the 10 billionth time. It did kind of add up, in my opinion.
Got it. Most definitely. So his intention was to further troll Bills Mafia, but what it did was it just ended up making us feel better.
It calmed me down a little bit because he was right. If you average it out based on his career record and the amount of refs, pretty much comes down to that record if you span it out across all of them. So I never want to have an additional thing to worry about. And these things, of course, are probably a bit blown up. But as we know, the Bills themselves this year have had a handful of games where it's come down to stuff like this. Now, a couple of them have benefited them. I can't lie. The Giants game probably should have lost. Refs don't call it pass interference. Obviously, the Chiefs are indeed offsides, but the ref called it. I mean, we've seen a million games where stuff like that doesn't get called. But you don't want to have those thoughts going into it. You can deal with that when it's happening. You don't want another thing added on top of the nerves already.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Well, guys, listen, we are approaching the hour mark real fast. Let's go ahead and just wrap this up with a final score prediction. And then hopefully, once again, a Bills roundtable. And by the way, guys, we are undefeated since we started this Bills roundtable.
Wow, that's a great point. Didn't even think about that.
That is indeed something to definitely
undefeated
hang your hat
since doing this, sacrificing to the pit. We got to just keep all of
I've
that
been
shit
seeing
going.
sacrifice into the pit as well, man. Listen, you know what? I do not encourage anyone to do that, but
my sister-in-law sends me the TikTok of the plot to sacrifice Taylor Swift to the pit because the pit's more appeased with the more famous the person in. She thought it was dead serious. I couldn't believe it. I literally said to her, I go, I'm going to see your girl Taylor Swift this week, and she goes, oh, she's not going. I sent you the TikTok. I go, what are you talking about? Well, the whole thing with I'm like, people. I mean, God bless her. I mean, maybe she's just watching a little too much TikTok. But there's some people out there that I think that they think this pit thing is a legitimate thing.
Yeah, most definitely, man. You know what? We'll see what's going on. All right, see.
I love it. I'm riding with it.
Give me your final score prediction and give me a hot take.
Wow. Well, I'm driving up tomorrow. I can't wait. Just bought the tickets, me and Dad. This was a moment I could not miss. Going up from Connecticut, Mahomes' first playoff game on the road, first time in Buffalo in front of fans. That alone has me through the roof excited. I cannot wait to be in the building for this one. Can't wait to see him in person, because just as a football fan, watching those two duel in person is going to be nuts. But it's also it always does. Being there, it tenfold fuels my anxiety level. As you know, Dan, back in week 1, it's like you flew up from Florida, like all this stuff you put in to go to the games, the money you spend or whatever. And then of course, if it doesn't go your way, it's like, it's the weirdest thing. It's almost like gambling. You gamble on going. If you go and you're there, it's like, oh my God, well, thank God we were there. And if you go and they lose, it's like, oh, what a waste of money. You sit in the car and just drown in your own sorrows on the way home. But I'm going up, have to see it in person. Could not be more stoked for it. And I'm hoping to God we go into Sunday night with that environment, an environment he has not seen, an environment the Bills have not had on their side in this moment, and they take advantage of it. I think the Bills win this game 23-20. It's going to be lower scoring, but it's once again going to be another instant classic. There's no way, in my opinion, this game does not come down till late in the fourth quarter, and there's no way there's not at least one play in this game that people are going to be talking about on Monday morning. What that is, whether it's controversial or whether it's an incredible play, it remains to be seen, but I just know for a fact it's going to be another classic, but this time around, simply because it's the greatest story ever told, damn it. They get it done in Buffalo. Bills move on. And I'll tell you what, I love the idea of this being the late game on Sunday, because I don't know if those other games are going to go the way everybody's thinking. 10-point favorites for San Fran, 10-point favorites for Baltimore. I'm dying to see, but could you imagine? I just want to put this out there real quick. I don't know the odds of it, but I'll tell you what. I just watched C.J. Stroud look like maybe a top 5 quarterback in this league last week. And they rolled that D. What is the environment in Buffalo going to be like on the off chance they're playing for a home AFC championship game? Hopefully we add another element to this game going into Sunday, and it's that.
C.J. Stroud will beat Baltimore. Kevin, what do you got? Talk to me.
I've studied this game inside and out, from analytics to box scores to film. And really what I've come up with in this game is that the road splits for Mahomes are fine. He plays well on the road. The team does not. 24-17 Bills. It's a game where Mahomes is going to have the ball once again to be able to tie the game and to bring it into an epic overtime fashion, and he's not going to get it done. My hot take is James Cook goes over 100 yards rushing because they're vulnerable there, and the Bills are going to shrink this game. They're going to use their secondary options that we talked about on the show earlier, at the top of the show. It's going to be 24-17. And a game where the Bills are much in control for the majority of it. I think that they'll be up 2 scores in this football game.
Wow. God, do I hope that's true.
Dude, listen,
do you think that they'll be up 2 scores early in the game or like later in the third going into the fourth? How do you see that?
Later in the game going into the fourth.
Later in the game.
They're going to shorten the game. Yeah.
So kind of similar to what we just had a little bit, where it felt like they were in control. They did have the 2-score lead, but it didn't feel like it was completely secured until it was.
I think reverse. I think it's going to be closer in the beginning, not 21-0. I think it's going to be hovering around the 10-7 number, 7-7 number. The Bills are going to have a little bit of offensive explosion going into the fourth quarter, where Mahomes is then going to answer with a touchdown to bring it up, maybe hold the Bills on one drive, and then they're going to have the ball to down 7. That's the way I see this game going, based on all the factors of how their defense plays, how they play in the road, all the factors. That's kind of what I have. And their inability to score in the red zone is a problem.
All right, guys, listen, I just found out that the AFC's roundtable is supposed to be starting right now. Sorry, Z-Bot. It starts now.
It was 6. I know you said 6, and then you said 7:30. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So I got to roll over?
Yeah. I'll go ahead and I'll send you over that link, guys. But before we go, I do want to go ahead and just share a nice little meme, especially since it just ended up coming out that Tony Romo is going to be announcing this game.
I've been seeing these all week. It's
all right, boys. We'll see you next time. Z-Bot, I'll send you over the AFC's roundtable. He's filling in for me tonight, guys. I have to be an uncle tonight, but we'll see you soon.
Good luck at being an uncle.
Good luck. It's fun. Go do it.
Later. Oh, shit. And so I left the studio. That ended the stream.